Thank you for joining us today for our winter sport webinar. My name is Annette Eckel, and I am the marketing coordinator for Longevity Physical Therapy, which has 3 locations in San Diego County. Longevity Physical Therapy is a team of compassionate individuals looking to help you move and live better by addressing your movement challenges and providing excellent and individualized physical therapy. We strive to deliver clear and concise health information and webinars to help you live your best in 2021. As a reminder, the information shared today is not to be used as a substitute for professional diagnosis, treatment, or advice. Always seek the guidance of your physician with any questions you may have regarding your health and conditions and when starting any new exercise programs. We'll be saving a 15-minute Q&A at the end to answer any questions. During the webinar, you may put them in the chat box and we can address them at that time. Our speaker today is Nick Van Hoorn. Nick Van Hoorn obtained his Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science from California State University, Long Beach, and his doctorate of physical therapy from San Diego State. In addition, he's a certified personal trainer. He became interested in the field of physical therapy after an injury in high school, and through that experience found his chosen career. He practices physical therapy in our La Costa clinic, and in his free time enjoys spending time with friends and family, camping, hiking, going to the beach, and of course, skiing. Welcome, Nick Van Hoorn.
All right, thank you for that introduction, Annette. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right, so thank you all for coming out to our Preparing for Winter Sports webinar. So let's get right into it. So just as an overview about what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be going over how our muscles are used during skiing and snowboarding and which muscles are important to keep us upright on the slopes here. We'll touch on the cardiovascular demands and how to train those, and then we'll be going into a little bit of a ski day warm-up and some exercises that you can do throughout your day and everyday life to better prepare you to get on these slopes. All right, so first things first, what do our muscles have to do as we're going down the slopes? Main thing is keep you upright. In other words, keep you from falling. What you got to do here is stay balanced and maintain proper positioning to be able to have an efficient ride pattern. You have to be able to react quickly to changes in direction or terrain, which can come up randomly on the slopes. And then you obviously have to be able to control forces that are imposed by the surface that you're on. This can be bumps, rocks, roots, really any of the above. And we're going to be doing that in what we call an eccentric manner. And an eccentric muscle contraction is basically instead of your muscles contracting and shortening, they're going to be doing a controlled lengthening, and that's going to be able to control anything that's coming from the ground up, going through your ankles, knees, and hips. An example of this is if you're going to be doing a squat, it's the phase where you're slowly controlling yourself down, and then the opposite motion is called a concentric motion, which is when the muscles are pushing you back up. Research has found that there's about 2 times as much eccentric muscle activity than concentric on the slopes. So when people are going down these hills. So we want to be able to train that in a little bit more of a specific manner to better prepare these people for going down the hill. All right, so what is your ideal posture for skiing? The first thing I want to look at is a hip hinge. So that's going to be with this gentleman in the front here in the orange jacket. You can see his trunk is bent forward slightly, but his back is nice and flat. And he's got his hips bent and knees bent to keep his weight distributed a little bit more forward and in the front of the boot there. You want your weight to be just in front of your heels, so a little bit in that midfoot. And then one way that you can reinforce this is by keeping your hands in front of you. And that's going to help you maintain that position there and keep you from going backwards, which we'll talk about here in a second. You want those skis to be parallel to each other. So they'll be going here. Instead of having one foot in front of the other, or going to the pizza french fry stance there, you want to keep them parallel so that you can distribute your force between the skis as you go down to avoid any excess sliding or scraping of that bottom ski there. You also want to be able to keep your torso facing down the hill, and you want to create some separation between your upper and lower body to help you carve a little bit more smoothly without coming to any hockey stops. So why are we doing all this? Again, we're going to be able to be ready to absorb any forces that's imposed by the terrain. So that could be a bump, a rock or any ice that you might hit as you're going down the hill there. You want to stay bent forward because getting too tall can cause you to be real rigid. And if you do hit any kind of bump, you're not going to be able to absorb that force well. It'll probably throw your center of gravity off a bit, and it might end up with you being on the ground, which we want to avoid at all costs. And then the last reason is you want to reduce any excess force being on one ski over another. So if you have too much force on one ski, that ski has a higher chance of sliding out, or if you catch an edge on that side, it might send you flying. So next, let's talk about carving on skis. So first things first, again, you want to keep those skis parallel, but you don't want them all the way together, which you might see some people doing. You want them about hip width so that you can distribute your weight between these skis and get onto these edges smoothly, allowing for a better turn. You're going to want to let your weight come onto your top ski, as you see this person doing here, and your lower ski is going to glide into the turn to avoid any excess sliding on that ski there. Once you're in a more perpendicular position, so if you're here on the mountain, once you're going a little bit more horizontal to it, you're going to want to distribute your force more evenly to prepare for your next turn. So going from left to right. And then one thing you'll see people do is they're going to rotate their body to create a turn. What that does is it causes some sliding as you're going down the mountain here. And instead of smoothing out and going with this arrow here, you're going to be going with this lighter shade and creating a big dust pile. All right. And then just for body stance, again, you're going to be alternating from one side to the next, leaning in the opposite direction so that you can keep your center of gravity right here at your hips. One way that you can assist with that is you can plant this pole and allow your body to lean a little bit to the side without completely toppling over there. All right. So next is the ideal posture for snowboarding. So I think I like this picture a lot because it's real simple. She's not going too fast. And then you can see she's got her knees bent, but the hips are forward. So it's not like she's sitting to a full squat, more so standing over that board, keeping the hips parallel with it. She's got her back a little bit more upright. She's bent here because she is doing a hillside turn. But what you're doing as you're going flat down the mountain is you're almost standing up straight with a little knee and hip bend. You want to keep your pelvis aligned between your feet so you're not getting too much force on one foot over the other, which can cause a little bit more of a sliding turn instead of carving evenly from one side to the next. So why are we doing all this? One thing is, again, you want to be able to absorb these forces that are imposed by the terrain, any bumps, rocks, or roots. You want to avoid getting too tall, which can cause you to fall backwards, or leaning too far forward can cause you to lean forward and fall on the wrist, which we've all seen some wrist fractures or hand injuries from these snowboarders. So you want to avoid doing that for sure. Last thing is you want to avoid having too much weight on one foot because it causes more of a slide or a hockey stop rather than a smooth carving turn to keep you going. All right. Next is carving on the snowboard. So the main thing here is you want to avoid any sliding and you want to keep a consistent radius of the turn. So instead of going one way, sliding and kicking up a bunch of dust, you want to be able to smoothly transition from one side of the board to the next. That'll help you control your speed and it'll avoid those legs working too hard on the way down so you can keep going throughout the day without getting too tired. You want to have your weight distributed on both feet evenly, kind of like what we talked about before. And then you're going to be shifting from your toes to your heels. So if you're going for more of a toe turn, you're going to be leaning forward slightly. Your shins are going to press into the front of the boots, and then the hips are going to be forward as you lift your heels to get that other edge of the board off the mountain there. For your heel turn, you're going to be doing pretty much the exact opposite. Shins are going to go to the back of the boots, hips are going to go backwards, and then you're going to lift your toes, just like this person is doing here, to allow that heel side edge to go into the snow and allow you to curve smoothly up in the other direction. One thing that you want to avoid, similar to skiing, is any counter rotation, where you got your body going one way and your hips going the other. This can throw your center of gravity off. It can also cause more of that sliding turn, which you'll see a lot of people who are beginners using to slow down their mountain. And what will happen there is you'll start kind of skidding. And if you hit any kind of rock, you can catch an edge. And that is the last thing that we want. All right. So let's go into some important muscles for skiing and snowboarding. So I broke it down a little bit more by trunk and then leg. So let's talk about the trunk first. You got your rectus abdominis, which is this big group right here. It's kind of like the six-pack muscle group. And that allows you to control your position of the trunk from the front. Then you got your internal, external obliques, which is a little bit more of control on the side. And that helps control any kind of side bending or rotational movement that you might be doing as you go down the slope. Lastly, you got your paraspinals, which are going to sit on either side of the spine on your back. And those are going to be the main ones that are important for keeping your trunk in a more upright position and keeping you from bending too far forward or curving your back as you're going down. Next, let's move on to the legs. So we'll split it up a little bit more by front of the leg, back of the leg. So to control the position of your hips, some important muscles that we got are your glutes, or your glute max, med, and min, which are all in this area right over here. You got your hamstrings, which run down the back of your thighs. And then you got your calves for control of the position of your ankle. On the front of the leg, you got your quadriceps to help control the position of the knee. And then your tibialis anterior, which pretty much works as an antagonist to the calves, so does the opposite motion. While the calves make your foot go in this position, your tibialis anterior helps you go into this position. And for your snowboarders, that's real important for getting into those heel side turns. All right. So what are some basic ways to build strength? If we're trying to start a strengthening program, ACSM recommends that we focus on compound or multi-joint movements. So that would be, for example, a squat, where you're getting a bend at the hip, the knee, and the ankle. And you're going to want to train major muscle groups in this way at least twice per week. For each time that you're training, you want to do at least 2 to 4 sets per major muscle group. And then for rep scheme, we can start talking about 8 to 12 if you want to go into pure strength or muscle growth. And then you also have the option to go towards 15 to 25 reps. And that's going to be for improving muscle endurance. I think that's really important for being on the slopes because you are going to be out there all day. You don't want these muscles to get too tired to the point where, you're falling because your legs are tired or anything like that. So definitely take breaks, but I would say it's more important to work in this range right here. Another thing a lot of people will do are jumping or plyometric activities. And you always want to perform these first to avoid any fatigue because they are a little bit higher injury risk than your basic squat or anything like that. All right, so next is the cardiovascular demand of skiing. So downhill skiers have been found to use about 55 to 88% of their VO2 max with downhill training. So what your VO2 max is the maximal amount of oxygen that you can uptake to get you to your maximal exercise. So 55 to 88 is pretty moderate to high intensity. And then when you're looking at your heart rate, these skiers were found to use about 84% of their heart rate max as they're doing these activities. So taking both of these numbers into consideration, you want to be able to have a strong anaerobic system for short duration and high intensity rides. So if you're going down a black diamond where it's a little steeper, a little bit shorter, you want to be able to have a system that you can use for that quick movement right there. And then you also want a strong aerobic system, which is going to keep you riding all day. Other things you have to consider are the effects of altitude, which is obviously going to give you less oxygen in the air. So your system has to be more efficient to distribute the proper amount of oxygen to your muscles so that you can work. And then it's also going to increase your heart rate as you're exercising as well. All right. So let's talk about a little bit of fatigue. So one thing that's been found through studies is that a superior fitness level is one of the more important factors for injury prevention. One reason this is true is because the more fit you are, the better effect that you have on your reaction time during exercise. And as you're skiing, reaction time is really everything. Someone might cut you off. You might not see a tree until the last second. And you want to be able to avoid that. And the best way to do so is 1, always be watching, and 2, have an efficiently working system to be able to have you turn at the last second or just come to a stop. So you want to be able to do that without being too tired. Another thing was found is that your peak quadricep and hamstring torque or strength starts to reduce after you ski for about 4 hours or more. So always take a break, go to the lodge, have a beverage of your choice, and then get back out there once you feel like you're ready to go to avoid the risk of injury that you got there. So how are we going to build this fitness? ACSM recommends going about 30 minutes of moderate intensity activity, at least 5 times per week. Or if you're going to do a more vigorous activity, you can reduce the amount of time that you're doing it, and still that frequency is going to be the same at that 5 times per week mark. Some exercises that would be good for building this would be running, walking, cycling, really anything on the right here, or any kind of cardiovascular exercise that you enjoy doing. Another good option is HIIT training. HIIT is high intensity interval training, and I like using that because you're going to be going more into that 80 to 95% of your heart rate max, which kind of links up with the study that found that they're using about 84% of their heart rate max throughout these activities. And then you're going to alternate intense work periods with recovery periods of about 40 to 50. Some common programming can include 1-to-1 intervals, where you're going about, let's say, 80% of your heart rate max for one thing, and then 40 to 50 for a recovery period after that. Another thing that would be useful is some sprint intervals, where you're going 30 seconds all out effort, followed by about 5 minutes recovery. So it really depends what you want to do there. And a lot of good options for these high intensity interval training is classes, which include F45, anything offered in the HIIT realm at 24-hour fitness, or any gym of your choosing. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here, and let's get into some exercises that I think would be good to get us on the mountain. All right, so we'll get started with some mobility warm-ups. I think that both of these exercises are going to be great for both skiers and snowboarders. And the first one that we're going to be doing is called a 3-dimensional calf stretch. So feel free to get up and do these with me, but they're also going to be included in the PDF of the presentation that we'll email to you after. So for the calf stretch, what you want to do is get some kind of raised surface. I have a wedge. You can use a rolled up towel, or you can use a ski boot, anything like that. You know, front of your foot on the wedge with your heel on the ground. And then you're going to be stepping in 3 different directions to hit every part of that calf muscle there. So you'll be stepping to the outside. For me, I'm stepping to the right, keeping this heel down, and I'll switch feet so you can see it better. But you're going to keep this heel down, keep this leg straight right here. Toes are elevated, heels on the ground. Put some weight to that front leg, come forward, and then come across. You should be feeling a nice stretch going down the calf here, maybe a little bit behind the knee. And why I think this is important is because when we're doing either of these sports, we are going to be in a position where your heel has to bend, or your ankle has to bend forward. So we want to be able to loosen that muscle up as we go. Next exercise we're going to be doing is something that is commonly referred to as the world's greatest stretch. What you're going to be doing here is you're going to enter a position of a low lunge. So I'm going to have my left foot forward. I'm going to get my right foot back as far as I can with my right hand down. In this position, I'm getting a nice opening through my hips. So I'm feeling it in the back of my left hip here, front of my right hip. And then what we want to do is we want to encourage some rotational mobility as well. Because we want to be able to rotate through these motions to go for efficient turn. I'm going to have my right foot down, and my left hand is going to reach up towards the ceiling. I feel a little bit more in my right glute and my left glute and my right hip flexor. I'll come back down. I recommend going through about 10 to 15 of these. And then you can switch positions, other foot in front, other foot behind, and you can go from there. Those are my 2 favorite mobility warm-ups for skiing. And now let's get into a little bit more of a stability warm-up. So first exercise I want to do is a 3-way squat. So what you'll do is stand with your feet about shoulder width apart, toes even. Then we'll do about 10 to 15 squats in this position here. It's going to distribute your weight evenly between both feet. So we'll start with that. And then to get a little more ski specific, we'll get one foot behind the other. For this one, I got my left foot behind. I'll be putting more weight onto this left foot here. I'll be going through another 10 to 15 on this side here. Lastly, we'll go right foot behind. So now I got more weight on my right leg. And be going back, forward and down. Next exercise I want to show you is a squat to heel raise. So this is going to be good to prepare for going up on any jumps, anything of that sort. You're going to squat down, drop your hands behind your hips like so. And then when you come up, I want you to come up onto those toes, hold for about a second, come back down. What I like about this one is you're working, one, your paraspinals, keeping you erect here, glutes and hamstrings, quads. And then at the top, you're also warming up those calves, which again is going to be very important for controlling the position of your ankle as you go. Last one is going to be a lateral shuffle to a squat. So it's going to be real specific for going down the hill like so. And you'll start in a squatted position here. You'll stand, shuffle, squat down again. So as you start to go faster, you can see you're going to be distributing your weight from one side to the next, getting ready to start turning, distribute your weight onto one foot over another. Next one, now we're going to get into a little bit more of the strengthening activity. It's going to be a 3D lunge. So 3D means 3 directions, and we'll start by going forward. So you're going to lunge forward, bend down. I'm bent here at my knee and my hip on both sides. And then if you want to add a little bit of a challenge, you're going to rotate over that hip, and you'll pop back. So this would be the basic version. And then if you want to add some challenge, again, you'll rotate, get a little more glute activity, come back to the top. Next one is going to be a lateral or sideways lunge. So you stand here, you're going to step out to the side, again, bend here, drop those hips back, come back to the top. And if you want to add a little bit more of a challenge, you can rotate over that leg as well. All right, last one for this lunge series is going to be rotational lunge. So I'm going to go to my right, I'm going to stand on my left. I'm going to open my body up 90 degrees, facing towards the wall over there. Sit the hips back, come back to the middle. And again, if you want to add a little bit more of a glute challenge, you can add that rotation in as well. Next exercise is going to start to get a little bit more activity of the single leg motion that I was talking about earlier. And what we can do is either go into a split stance, so a stance like so. Basically, it's a lunging position. I'm going to keep more weight on my front leg here, and then I'm going to drop down, come back up. So this is going to be a little bit more single leg based. I think it's going to be great to get you nice and strong for getting on those skis. If you want to add some challenge, you can also add a box or a step, where you have the back leg there, front leg in the front. It's going to help you distribute more weight onto your front leg. You can drop down and come on back up. A little more difficult here. And if you really want to challenge, you can add a hop. Come up like so. And that's going to be great for training you to absorb from getting down from a jump or anything like that. All right. Last one we got for skiing is a ski hop. So what you can do is stand feet about hip width apart, drop your hips back, and then you're going to hop one way, squat, and then reverse. So you'll be here, go hop, and land. This is really good to work on that weight distribution, get you ready for going down something like moguls or just a flat. All right. So now let's get a little more snowboard specific. Ooh. So for snowboarding, you're obviously going to have 2 feet on that board at all times. So we're going to go a little more 2-foot challenge. What you're going to do is, this one is called a squat slide. You'll get down to a squat, and then you're going to distribute your weight from one side to the next. So if you go in here, I'm on my weight on my left side, and then there. So now we're working on shifting the weight to the nose of the board or to the tail, depending if you're goofy or regular. And you just start working on shifting the weight side to side like so. Next one is going to be a squat with an alternating heel and toe raise. So it's going to be a little more specific to those that are on snowboards, get into some of these turns. So you'll drop down, and come forward, heels up, and you come back, toes up. So I'm going toe side turn, heel side turn. Maybe you're working on those calves, those tibialis anterior muscles here in the front of the shin, as well as everything going up the chain. Last one I like for a snowboard warm up is going to be a squat with an alternating knee push out. So what we're doing here is we're going to be training muscles of the hips to avoid any valgus positioning, which can cause some stress to the ACL and the meniscus. So you'll drop down, and then I want you to watch my knees as I go, pushing my knee out, back to the middle, other knee out. You can do about 10 each way. Your legs will probably start getting real shaky after that. Now let's get a little more strength and plyometric specific for snowboarding. The first one that you want to do is going to be a 3-way goblet squat. Very similar to what we were doing for the skis, where you have a 3-way squat, but we're adding some weight so we can challenge the muscles of our back more and help you maintain that upright positioning. So I got a kettlebell right here. You can use any kind of weight. You're going to hold it near your chest, keep that chest upright, feet even, go through 10 to 20 squats right here, keeping your weight distribution even and your back up. Next, you can drop that foot back, weight in the same spot. I'll have more weight on my left this time. Drop down, come on back up. Then you'll switch, right foot behind, same movement there. The next one that we're going to do is we got to focus on these hamstrings a little bit more. These are going to be one of the ones that are most active and keeping you from going too far forward. So what we got to do is, if you have a weight available, we'll do a Romanian deadlift where you're here, back stays flat, hips are going to go back, my knees are going to stay straight for the most part. Drop those hips back till you feel a stretch in your hamstrings. Hold it there, come back up. And I want you to avoid any excess extension. I want you to think about ending in a plank. So you're here, drop those hips back, stand on back up. If you don't have a weight available, that's totally fine. What you could do instead is you can get your hands behind your head, and then this is called the good morning. Pretty much the same movement, just a little bit different positioning of the arms. You'll be here, drop those hips back again, so you feel a nice stretch in the hamstrings. Come on back up. I think it's a great activity to work that posturing of the back and the hamstring strength at the same time. All right. Last one we're going to do is a little bit of a jumping exercise for snowboarding. I know that a lot of you boarders out there are going to be doing some jumps where you want to do a grab. So let's practice that. You're going to come down, touch the ground in between your legs. You come up and switch. This is going to be the easy version right here. If you want to get a little more jumping specific, you can add a jump. Again, about 10 to 20 of these, depending on how comfortable you are doing them. Last thing I want to get into is some core strength that I think is going to be good for each of these sports. So I like using plank positions. It works on the endurance of your core, and then we can give it some added challenges to make it a little harder. So what you'll do is you get into a plank position, hands under your shoulders, feet about hip distance apart. First exercise I want you to try is just doing some small leg lifts. If this plank is too difficult for you on the ground, you can always do it at the edge of a couch so that your body is a little bit more angled. Next one I want to do is some mountain climbers. So it's going to be good for the rectus abdominis, basically the muscles sit on the front of the core, as well as the obliques sitting on the side right here. All right, so first things first, let's go knee to same elbow. This is going to be the beginner. You're going to go there, back, there, back. For this exercise, your core has to control the position of your pelvis. And your rectus abdominis, or those six-pack muscles in the front, are able to control where that knee is going and where it's staying. To add a challenge, and add a little bit of an oblique challenge, we'll get into this position here. Same position to start. I want you to rotate, knee to opposite elbow, and you'll come back. So you can go up, rotate, reach back. Again, about 10 to 20 of those, depending on how you feel. Last exercise I want to show is going to be a side plank with a little bit of a hip abduction. By hip abduction, what I'm talking about is keeping this hip nice and high, not letting it cross over this midline here. So what you'll do is you'll come up onto one hip. This hip stays in the air, and then you can drop that hip down, push it back up. It's going to be a great exercise for the obliques as well as both glutes. And you want to be able to go through about 10 to 15 of these. You can switch sides and do it on the other side. So, like I said in the beginning, all these exercises are on the PDF that will be sent out to you. And then we're going to open it up for some questions. I'll hand it back to Annette.
All right, then let me go ahead and put this back on. So in closing, thank you for joining us today, and we hope you'll continue to find our content beneficial. We'll now stop recording and open up for questions and answers.